I asked a million men this question, married men only. A lot of men today seek marriage as a goal. What makes your marriage or relationship the sweet spot for you? I have a lot of guys asking me about the secret sauce to a good long-term relationship / marriage. So I polled my audience between all the socials. I've got a very large following, and this is a compiled stack of everything that came back. And I've got a few notes here that I want to sort of drill down that really popped out, almost like a word cloud, if you will. But before I get into my notes, I'm just going to read you a few of the responses that I got from guys answering that question. Some of them are longer, some of them are shorter. Bear with me, this is worth watching the entire video. There are lots of gold nuggets in this for the guys and for the gals that want to get married. The first guy I got here is Barry. He says, I've been with the same woman for 22 years, 4 years dating and 18 years married. Overall, it's been great. She has none of the red flags as described in your book. By the way, if you haven't read my book, you should get it. It's on Amazon. You can get the red flag chapter for free by opting into my email list pinned in the top comment below. Both of our families are traditional when it comes to gender roles, and there's no history of divorce. My wife is religious. I am not, but both of our families see marriage as a traditional institution in an unstable world. The view can be traced to her Lebanese and Orthodox Christian descent. Her dad is one of my favorite people in the whole world. I know that feeling when you have a great father-in-law. Someone who everyone looks up to and is the Don of the family. I'm assuming kind of like the Corleones or something. Don of the family, routinely displaying strength and virtue. The same could be said of my father. My wife has deep respect for her father, and I think that carries over for my role as the husband. Our sweet spot is that we get along very well despite not having very common interests. We do, however, share common values on money, family, gender roles, and politics. I've never lost respect or trust for my wife, and she has never disrespected me. Additionally, she follows my lead. Let's go to the next comment. Alex here says her body count is me. So she was a virgin when they got married. She's feminine. She's a good mother to my children, humble and God-fearing. A pretty smile and face helps too. Next guy is Robin, and he says, my wife is a traditional Christian wife. We both understand our roles in marriage. She married me when I had nothing, and I was looking after my handicapped sister. We are still together after nearly 20 years, 2 kids, and many beautiful memories. You're starting to see a pattern develop here, which I'm going to break down in a moment. Chris here says, she listens to my instructions, always asks me about various things, what I want, whether it's buying something or going out, fixing things, etc. She isn't afraid to get her hands dirty and do outdoor work. She loves being physical with me. We share the same beliefs and values. She grew up with her dad, which really helped her understand what a man wants. She doesn't raise her voice at me or acts crazy. Soft-spoken and using reason to some extent, which is not very common today when it comes to the gals. Mike here says, my wife follows my lead. My wife doesn't get in the way of my career path. My wife seeks my counsel first. My wife knows appearance matters. My wife is fit with a six-pack. My wife doesn't bring negativity home. My wife is appreciative. My wife didn't bring baggage like debt. I make the decisions. She brings me caffeine upon waking up, preps my meals and food based on the calories I need daily. My wife takes care of our home. My wife knows that I won't tolerate any BS attitudes. Sometimes I wake up thinking maybe I'm dead and it's all a dream. This sounds like the dream that most guys seek. Unfortunately, very few guys actually are able to achieve this in reality. This guy here, Kevin, says, married to an amazing wife for 14 years and counting. Before her, I dated single moms, broken women, etc. I was exhausted and driven crazy. I was also in the military at the time. When I got out in 2009, I not only left the military, but also decided to have zero tolerance policy for bad behavior. I met a younger woman who was optimistic, positive, friendly, and just a great person, and effing hot, he says. To this day, we are each other's peace, and we work out great. I know what it's like to want peace in a long-term relationships. The absence of peace in it is very uncomfortable. It's very difficult to live through. Armin here says, been married for 8 years. We have 2 kids. My way or the highway. Can't expect a woman to respect you if you do not respect yourself and set boundaries. If you don't like certain stuff, say so. Even the nicest woman will take advantage of you if you let her. The women I see now are absolutely effed. Good luck out there, guys. Edward here says, my wife and I share the same beliefs and religion, and she agreed to the biblically submissive role of wifehood when we got married. Our relationship is largely trouble-free because even with her feminine mood swings and hormones, she remembers the agreement and genuinely believes that she is called by God to serve and aid me in any way possible. In return, I do everything I possibly can for her and try to lead the family as unselfishly as possible. Sounds like a good combination between the two. She was a virgin when we married and is completely faithful, and now we have 5 children and are happily and healthy. She minds her diet and her weight and strives to do what she believes is right. She doesn't try to usurp authority or take over. Well, there you have it, guys. I'm going to hit the road here and go through a few of the notes that I have because they're very, very relevant to some of those talking points. Like I said, I had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of responses on Twitter, on my YouTube community tab. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe, because I like to ask my audience questions like this and engage with them to get feedback for content. I always find it's very, very interesting, because guys still to this day seem to routinely seek a marriage as the optimal, you know, the relationship goal, the sweet spot, if you will. And it's a very dangerous place for guys to be today. I mean, you know, I mentioned my book earlier, and there's a chapter in my book that talks about why smart men are not getting married today. And it's not that I'm opposed to marriage or I don't want guys to get married. It's just, it's not a very good idea for a whole bunch of reasons. I can make another video on that again. There's probably something on my playlist. But in this one, I wanted to talk more specifically about why the sweet spot exists, right? Because it's like this elusive unicorn for a lot of guys. They all want this like perfect relationship, you know, where she respects him, values him, wants to be intimate with him on a very frequent basis. All of that good stuff, you know, that like a Disney-esque sort of story that we've all been told. Okay, so the first one was shared beliefs in life, politics, child rearing, you know, how you're going to raise your kids, whether they're homeschooled, what kind of school they're going to go into. But you'll notice that one of the things that popped up commonly in the top comments, and this wasn't just in the top comments, by the way, I just went through the top comments. There was many more. I'll put a link below in the description if you want to read them all on the community tab, so you can go there directly. But having a shared belief system between you and the woman that you invite into your life on a long-term basis, and whether that's in a marriage or whether that's in a committed relationship, whatever that happens to be, you both have the same value system. You have the same value system on health, the same value system on politics and voting, on lifestyle, on education, on religion, if that matters to you, on sleep schedules, on so many things, tastes and even entertainment. Now, I've said in some instances, women will actually adopt the beliefs and the things that we like when it comes to long-term relationships if they really like a guy. So I found, from my own anecdotal experience, if a woman really likes you, she'll start to adopt your political taste, she'll start to adopt your musical taste, she'll start to adopt even your culinary taste, where she might have been hesitant in the past maybe to indulge in sushi. All of a sudden now she has a fond taste for sushi, or she was hesitant to eat meat products, but you're a meat eater and you start, you know, feeding her meat sort of thing, and she eats it, right? They will adopt your, you know, your beliefs if they really like you that much, if they see you as a strong option. The next point that I got is the submissive wife role. Wow, I'm glad this came up, because I've been saying this for years, and I think that there has to be positions that we play in a long-term relationship. A buddy of mine, he always says, you know, the reason why my marriage has worked out is because we have blue jobs and pink jobs. I do the blue jobs, I do the barbecuing, I clear the snow in the driveway. If there's something that's got to be checked on the car, I look after it. She does the pink job. She takes care of the meal prep. She takes care of cleaning the kitchen, packing the kids' lunches, stuff like that. You see what I'm saying? You subscribe to the traditional, conventional sort of roles that we have historically throughout, you know, generations, essentially. I think that we're doing a complete disservice today when we're encouraging, you know, men to become more feminine and women to become more masculine, and there's this like blurred line of, there's no real consistency or clarity about who does what and when things are sort of done. So one of the things that popped up, which I found was interesting, is conventional sort of like submissive, you know, he's the guy, she's the gal, he does the guy stuff, she does the gal stuff. It makes sense, right? Wow, the next one, number 3, was either being a virgin at marriage or a very low notch count. I think one of the things that popped up was I was her notch count. She was a virgin when we got together. I met her when she was 20. You'll notice in all of those replies, every single one, and if you go and drill down and you read the rest of them, there was no guy that was like, well, I met my wife when she was 32 after she had, you know, spent her 20s getting degrees and climbing the corporate ladder and traveling Europe and going out and partying with her friends and cousins downtown, indulging in men and racking up notch counts. You notice that that didn't pop up. Isn't that interesting that one of the things that creates cohesion and some sort of stickiness in the long-term relationship is that promiscuity was absent. There was a complete absence of her spending a lot of time with a whole bunch of different guys from her past. So, I mean, I've said this before, and I think the Teachman study is the one that echoes it the best. You can go look this up. But what they found is, and they stopped collecting the data after I think it was 11 or 12 notches, but essentially a virgin or a virgin bride or a woman with one notch, a very low notch count, let's call it, has a very, very high chance of being happy in a long-term relationship and sticking to the marriage. I believe the number is something like somewhere between 80 and 86%. So incredibly high. They stopped collecting the data again around 11 or 12, but where it really went south where it really started to go downhill was after about 6, I believe. And what ended up happening was it started to show that if a woman had shared her body, and again, we're talking less than 10 guys here. That's an incredibly low number. I think you're lucky today if you're dealing with a woman in her 20s or even 30s that has a notch count lower than 10. You'd be very lucky if you found that, but it just doesn't exist. So when it came down to a promiscuity number, the numbers went south after about 5 or 6. They didn't get much worse after that. They did get worse, but around 30 to 33% chance of happiness in a marriage, in a long-term relationship, which is an incredibly bad statistic. Going from 80-something% down to 30%, that is a massive drop in the probability of happiness and her wanting to stick it out. I think that one of the things that is a strong leading indicator, and I've talked about this before, and I've had a lot of anecdotal evidence show itself to me now with guys that I've coached, guys that I've talked to that called in, even my own personal life as well, is that if a woman is dealing with you and you set a boundary, or there's some conflict and she doesn't like something that you say, or something like that, if you're guy number 10 or 8 or 9 or something like that, it's very easy for her to go to guy number 11 because she's already done it 9 or 10 times, and she's walked away from 9 or 10 other guys. So what would stop her from walking away from you and to going to the next guy and the next guy and the next guy? And I think that is reflected very, very clearly in a lot of the comments and the feedback that we got from the guys that are reporting back saying, my marriage is my sweet spot for these reasons. And one of them was a lack of promiscuous behavior in her past. Okay, the next one, number 4, was respecting him, his boundaries, and her father. I've said in my book, one of the red flags, in fact, the first red flag that I put in the book was having daddy issues. And one of the things that I've even noticed personally to myself is if a woman doesn't respect her father's boundaries and adhere to them, what makes you think you're going to get her to adhere to yours and be a complement to your life and help you build a family and children and a household, and there's respect? Disrespect is one of the key leading indicators to the end of a relationship. It's been said that contempt is the clock that ticks down to the end of a relationship. If a woman's disparaging you, if she expresses contempt or disrespect for you, the chances are you are already in a very unhappy relationship and it's slated to end or is ending at some point. Again, so one of the key indicators that we got feedback from guys saying that their marriage is a sweet spot for them, that it's a good place, that they're happy in it, is that their wife is respectful to them. I've been in relationships where a woman can be disrespectful and not follow your boundaries, and it's incredibly frustrating as a guy to do something to protect the virtue, the value, whatever it happens to be, of the integrity of that relationship because you love that person, and then they basically look at you or laugh, or they'll go and do it anyway. And I think that the father sets the tone for this. So I believe it's incredibly important as a guy, and again, I cover this in the book in the red flag chapter. If you haven't got it, just get the red flag chapter. It's totally free. Opt in the email list. Is look for a woman that has a very good relationship with her dad, that respects her father, that follows his virtues and values. One of the things that I think you want to look out for is, when you're dating or early on, ask her a question like, what's your relationship with your parents like? Cool, she starts talking. If she doesn't talk about her dad or leaves it out, oh, you didn't mention anything about your dad. Did you guys get along good when you were growing up? And just shut up and listen and let her talk to you. And then start probing. Ask leading questions that sort of get to the point. I mean, if she starts saying something like, he was there, but he was a piece of furniture, he didn't really engage with me, or, maybe the mom pushed him out of the household, well, that's not the dad's fault. There's all kinds of, intricacies that can happen. Or if you hear some story like, well, there was a period of time when I was in a certain age range where I was dating guys that my dad didn't approve of and we didn't talk, or something like that, that's a problem. Again, like I said earlier, if she's not going to respect her father, what makes you think that she's going to respect your boundaries? All right, number 5, zero tolerance for bad behavior was another common one that would have come up in the word cloud. Tolerance for bad behavior. Disrespect is kind of tied into that. Hissy fits I would throw into bad behavior. A lot of the times I've seen like these Reddit posts or something on social media where a woman will write something. She's like, my husband makes $250,000 a year, and we've got a nice house and I take care of the kids, and he goes to work, he brings home the bacon and I cook it up, but he's got me in a financially abusive relationship because he's setting a boundary. I'm in a financially abusive relationship is a sort of narrative that comes off of it. So the bad behavior part comes into the hissy fits. Women will throw hissy fits when they don't get their way. And it's no different than a child. I remember a few times when my kid didn't get her way when she was a small child, they just slam themselves on the floor and start kicking and screaming with their, their hands and their legs and crying, because they don't have any emotional maturity to deal with, the denial or the rejection of requests or things that they want. So they just have a complete spaz and a meltdown. In an adult woman, I've seen them do anything from, you might have a temporary breakup, or you say no, and then they sort of run off, and then one of their immediate responses, they'll go off and they'll bang another guy, sort of thing. Or they'll go and do something that you explicitly said would be a bottom line. You draw a line in the sand, you basically say, hey, this is my bottom line. If you cross it, then I'm going to know that you don't want to be with me. She knows what the bottom line is, and as a result of her not respecting your boundaries and going beyond them, throws a little bit of a hissy fit. It's not good for the relationship. It's not a good look. It's another sign of disrespect. It's one of the cardinal sins, I believe, if a woman wants to keep a guy around a long term and they have a strong, everlasting connection well into, some of these guys we're talking 20, 22 years, stuff like that. That's a long time. All right, number 6, that was younger. That was another word that popped up quite a few times. There was no guy in that list that said, I married an older woman. There was no guy in that list that said, we were the same age when we met. Most of them, as I read it, it sounded like they had met women that were younger than them, that they were more senior and they were more junior. I've said this before. I find that the sweet spot when it comes to a longer term relationship with a woman is probably around something like 7 to 15 years difference, meaning they're about 7 to 15 years younger than you. If you're 25 or 30, for example, 7 to 15 years doesn't make sense. But if you're a more seasoned guy closer to my age, 7 to 15 years might make better sense for you. So just understand that that's just one of the things that pops up. Again, it's anecdotal evidence. It's just something that we're looking at. You can go read the rest of the comments and the responses there to get some more ideas. You guys should definitely chop it up in the comments below this video and let me know what your personal experience has been. All right, the next one, number 7, I think it was staying fit and feminine. Isn't that interesting? For a guy to be happy in a long-term relationship, he wants to be attracted to the woman. He wants to look at her, and I know, that I'll do this if I'm in an LTR, is I want to look at her and think years down the road, oh yeah, she's, she's hot, like I got it, and she does the same thing for you, of course, right? I mean, I do my best to stay fit, obviously. I'm in pretty good shape for my age, but most women and most couples today that you'll see out in public are just not in the best shape. They just don't take care of themselves, or they let themselves go, or they'll tell themselves some story about, baby weight, or I don't have time to go to the gym or exercise, or something to do with hormones. A lot of that is it's just coping, okay? It's just cope. It's just, you're trying to complicate your life and justify why you do it, and it's not going to work. You can lie to yourself. You can try to make it, the reason why you're overweight or you're not that attractive or masculine or feminine. We see, again, I mentioned earlier, we see this trend today where we see men being feminized, soft, they call them the soy boys or the beta males sort of thing. They're very agreeable. They're weak. They don't have strong bone structure. They don't look like the kind of guy that could throw hands if the shit hit the fan, if you know what I mean. And then women on the other side of the equation are more masculine, and they're kind of forced to be because, nature hates a vacuum. And if there's a lack of masculinity, then that forces women to take on the role. That's why you see so many women today saying, I'd love to be married or I'd love to be a guy, but I can't find anybody. And I've had to go get a job and take care of myself and buy the house and the Tesla and decorate it and that sort of thing. And they essentially masculinize themselves. So one of the things that was common that kept popping up is that the men are masculine, the women are feminine. The men stay healthy, they're eating the right meals, they do the meal prep, and the women stay feminine and attractive. That's just the way that it works. I mean, that just seems to be one of the little pieces of glue that holds these relationships together. And the last and final one seems to be staying power. They'd stay together for a long period of time. They met when they had nothing. Isn't that a beautiful thing? They meet young, they haven't been promiscuous, continue to stay together, and they build their lives together, and they start from nothing. One of the things that popped up often in a lot of those comments was, she met me when I had nothing, through thick and thin, when I was broke ass and looking after my disabled sister, or some soundbite like that, and we built something together. So there you have it, guys. Those were the things that popped up most often that I believe that you should contemplate if you want marriage to be a sweet spot or even a long-term relationship. Because let's be honest, marriage may not be for you. You may live in a place like Canada, where I live, where I discourage people from inviting the state into your household, but you may want a long-term relationship. And at the end of the day, it's not that much different. I mean, the only difference is with a marriage, you have a ceremony, it's usually church-related, you invite the government into your life, you sign a contract, and you live together and you exchange rings, and sometimes you have children, or you should have children. at the very least. But bottom line is, if you're going to invite a gal into your life on a long-term basis, I think it's incredibly important to contemplate a lot of these points that became obvious sweet spots in the comment threads and integrate them into your life, into your dating life. If you're vetting for wife stock because you want to have children, they look very, very important. Some of these were a little bit of a surprise to me, if I'm being honest, but not earth-shattering for me, if I can put it that way. And ladies, there's some lessons in there too as well. Don't run around. If you want to find a husband, if you want to have a good long-term relationship, do it when you're young. Don't be promiscuous. Find a strong masculine man. Be a feminine woman. Make sure you have a good relationship with your father. A lot of those things seem to matter for the ladies too as well. So I hope this video helps you guys.